This is the Locked On Jets podcast on this Sunday morning. I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com with an injury update to get you ready for today's game between the Jets and the Miami Dolphins. Kickoff time scheduled for 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS. The game will be played in Miami. Both cornerback Sauce Gardner and running back Breece Hall are doubtful for this game. Neither player practiced all week. In fact, doubtful might be a little bit optimistic. Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets' interim head coach, indicated late in the week that unless something drastic changes for either player, they will miss this game. Sauce Gardner is dealing with a hamstring injury he suffered in last week's loss to the Seattle Seahawks, while Breece Hall is dealing with a knee injury. So we're in the evaluation phase of the season for the Jets right now. And the team is technically still alive for the playoffs, although the odds are pretty high the Jets will be eliminated by the time Week 14 is over. I know there are going to be some conspiracy theorists out there who question whether these guys are actually injured. There's really no reason to doubt that they're dealing with these injuries legitimately. But this does open up an opportunity for the Jets to get some younger players, some reps. And I think that that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world at this point in the season. Both Hall and Gardner figure to be key players for the Jets going forward. There's really no reason to rush them back from any injury that they've suffered. You want to get them healthy. You want them to have a full and productive offseason. You don't want to risk them getting injured worse. This is a different story if the Jets are in the middle of the playoff race right now. If this is a big game for the Jets, maybe you send guys out there when they're less than 100%, but there's really no reason for the Jets to do that right now. And it opens up some reps for some younger players. At the running back position, we'll see Braelon Allen get more action. And we'll also see Isaiah Davis. Both backs are rookies. The Jets famously drafted both guys on day 3 of this year's NFL draft. Braelon Allen has been the number 2 back behind Breece Hall for most of the season. Got off to a very hot start, but really has struggled since the calendar turned from September to October. In fact, he's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry since the month of September ended. Through the first 4 games, he was producing at a really, really high clip. He looked like a genuine steal in the draft. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Allen was averaging 4.8 yards per carry, and he was also adding production in the passing game. And since then, over the last 8 games, Allen's only averaging 2.7 yards per carry. And worse than that, there's only one game he's averaged more than 3 yards per carry. That was the Jets' loss to Arizona back on November 10th. So maybe the Jets can get Braelon Allen going a little bit. And also Isaiah Davis, rookie out of South Dakota State, who's kind of been an afterthought this year. You've seen him as kind of the number 2 return guy on kickoffs. You'll see him out there with Xavier Gipson. That actually ended last week. But Davis started to take on more of a role in the offense. He scored a touchdown, which was kind of a walk-in touchdown. But in the fourth quarter, he had a big reception where he made a couple guys miss in open field that put the Jets from 3rd and a mile to 4th and manageable, and they eventually picked up that 4th down on their last drive, although they ultimately did not score. And then at the corner position, it's going to be interesting because a lot of the local reporters suggest that Brandon Echols is going to start today in place of Sauce Gardner. I think Qwan'tez Stiggers would be a more logical guy to start. Now, Stiggers is also on the injury report this week, but he was able to practice fully by Friday. He was dealing with some sort of illness, so maybe that plays into the idea that Echols will start. But Stiggers got some action last week. Stiggers, if you're not familiar with his story, was actually drafted out of the CFL. He never played college football because of a family tragedy left him distraught and led him to leave the game. And then his mother signed him up for this minor league, and he caught the attention of some Canadians, some guy with ties to Canadian football. So he ended up playing in the CFL, but because he had never been drafted before, he was actually drafted straight out of the CFL. And look, we know that the Jets are going to have a regime change this offseason, but the past regime viewed Stiggers as starting material going forward. So if he's healthy enough to be in the lineup, if he's healthy enough to be active, I think he should see plenty of action in this game. I think that's one of the challenges of the NFL is that there's no minor league system right now. There's no developmental system the way there was 20, 30 years ago. 20, 30 years ago, there was a developmental league in Europe. It was called NFL Europe. And it was a great spot to send like late round draft picks who didn't get much playing time during the regular season because those guys need game action. There's no more developmental league in the NFL. And there's no minor league. There's never been a pure minor league system the way the NBA has the G League or hockey or baseball have their own minor league setups, which means you can't really get inexperienced guys game action because in the majors, in the NFL, the goal is to win every week. Well, when you get to late in the season, when you get to this point of the year where the team's out of the playoff race and you're not really going anywhere, this is an opportunity to get some of these younger guys some action. I mean, I think it would make sense to get Isaiah Davis more action, even if Breece Hall was healthy. With Sauce Gardner out, you don't like Sauce Gardner being out, but it presents an opportunity for somebody like Qwan'tez Stiggers to step into the starting lineup. And in a lost season, that's really all you can look to as a fan. I think we know that the result of this game is not really going to matter all that much. I know that there are the people who love tanking. I know that there are the people that they're rooting for the Jets to lose for better draft positioning. But the reality is just that moving up one spot in the first round doesn't help your odds all that much. I guess it's something, but it's not really anything that does something tangible for you. And winning these games doesn't really have a point because the Jets are long out of the playoff race. This team really is not going anywhere this season. So an opportunity to get a few more younger, unheralded players into the lineup, first of all, gives you a chance to see them, but second of all, gives them game reps to try and develop, to try to get used to NFL competition. And if all goes well, maybe these game reps do them some good. Maybe these game reps prepare them to take on a better role next season and beyond. Well, that's certainly what you have to hope for if you're a Jets fan, because there's not a lot good going on for this team. Now, ahead here on this special Sunday morning edition of the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to one other injury. It's a longer-term injury. It's an older player, and it sets up an interesting decision the Jets will have this offseason. We'll talk about that as we continue on this Sunday morning edition of Locked On Jets. Special edition of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holiday bigger and brighter. Here's why you need to check it out. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Again, it's code LOCKEDONNFL using the Prize Picks app. Code LOCKEDONNFL, one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you just play $5. Prize Picks, run your game. The Locked On Jets podcast on this Sunday morning, getting you ready for the game between the Jets and the Miami Dolphins today, 1 o'clock Eastern from Miami. Jets made some big injury announcements on Friday. We talked about Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall being likely out of this game. The team also announced that C.J. Mosley, the longtime linebacker, is heading to injured reserve. Mosley's been dealing with an injury in his neck. He's only played 4 games this season, and it feels like it might be the end of the line for Mosley. Mosley's season is definitely going to be over now that he goes to injured reserve. I think the Jets could technically activate him for the last week of the season, but there'd really be no point in doing that. And it doesn't sound like he'll be ready by that point anyway. And that sets up a decision this offseason the Jets will have with Mosley. Mosley's been a good player for the Jets. The problem is his contract is just a bad contract. It's a poorly written contract. The Jets have made a number of ill-advised restructures, and they put themselves at a point where they have a lot of pretty unattractive decisions on what to do with Mosley. And there are a couple layers to this decision. So financially, next season, if Mosley's on the team, he counts for $12.784 million against the cap, and then he'll be a free agent after the season, but he'll also count $7.65 million in dead money against the cap in 2026. So if Mosley's on the team next year, the Jets essentially will be charged $20.434 million over 2 years, which is a lot for a 33-year-old linebacker, and a 33-year-old linebacker who, body doesn't seem like it could hold up anymore. If Mosley's cut, the Jets take a dead money hit of $16.434 million. So, very unattractive. So for next year, for 2025, Mosley costs less to keep than to cut, because if he's on the team next year, he counts $12.784 million. If he's cut, he costs $16.434 million. So, 13 million versus $16.5 million. So for next year, he's cheaper, but over the long run, it's $20 million, $20.434 million over 2 years versus $16.434 if he's cut. So next year, it's cheaper for 2025 if he stays. But over the long run, the Jets will be charged $4 extra million if they keep him next year. I mean, I think the move is to cut him. I think the move will be to move on from C.J. Mosley. I don't think the contract is tradable. I think if Mosley had a better contract, you could look at trading him. But I think over the long run, you save $4 million, which makes sense because, again, Mosley's 33. He's a good player. He's been a good player for the Jets. He's been a good locker room guy for the Jets. He's just made way too much money. And the Jets have not been responsible for dealing with his contract. The Jets have essentially used the Mosley contract as an ATM machine to try and juice up their short-term cap space. Every single time the Jets need cap space, it feels like they restructure the Mosley contract, they lower his current cap hit and push money to the future. Well, the future is about to come. And the Jets have put themselves in, not a great position with this deal. I think the other element to this is the emergence of Jamien Sherwood, who I think has had a breakout season and is in a contract year himself. Now, would Sherwood want to return to the Jets? That's not entirely clear. He spent his entire career as a backup. He hasn't really gotten a chance to play. The Jets are obviously a very unstable situation. They don't even have a coach in place right now. So if you're Sherwood, you're probably not going to look to sign an extension before the season ends because you don't know what system the Jets are going to run. You don't know whether you'll be a good fit for it. You don't know whether you'll like the new coach. But I think the Jets should be interested in trying to re-sign Sherwood. I think he's been a success story for this team. A fifth-round pick out of Auburn in 2021. He converted from safety to linebacker. That's been a successful conversion. You've seen a guy blossom. It would be a shame that the Jets invested 4 years in this guy and then you lose him to somebody else right after he breaks out. The other spot would be Quincy Williams. If the Jets have a linebacker core of Sherwood and Quincy Williams going forward, I mean, that's something you can work with. That's pretty good. But I think it's clear that, the Mosley era has probably ended for the Jets, or it probably should have ended for the Jets. The only real benefit you get out of keeping Mosley is that in the short run for next season, you do save about $3.5–4 million in cap space, but then you had an extra cost in 2026, which is just very unattractive because Mosley's near the end of his career. Mosley might be able to help some team out there. If I was a team that was a contender, I was looking for a linebacker, and my linebacker play was a real hole, and I couldn't stop the run. Mosley might be a guy I look at, but for a team like the Jets, who's probably going to spend 2025 in reset mode, I don't think Mosley's a very logical player to have around the team. Now, he's a good locker room guy, in the sense that you're going to probably have more of a youth movement next year. A guy like Mosley, who's a leader in the locker room, could be a positive, but just not at the price he's at. And that's been one of the stories of CJ Mosley's tenure with the Jets, where he's been good. Nobody's going to say he's been bad. He just makes way too much money. And the Jets have not done a good job, dealing with that contract. And that's how you get into a situation with the 33-year-old linebacker where you have a $12 million cap hit or a $16 million cap hit if he's cut. But I guess that's part of the story of the way the Jets have run their team over the last couple of years. They've left themselves with a lot of bad choices. I think the Jets should move on, though, and move forward with Jamien Sherwood, who's youth, who could be the future of the linebacker position for this team if the Jets are able to get him back on a decent deal. Anyway, that's all for this special edition of Locked On Jets. Hope you enjoy the game today. We'll see whether the Jets can actually get a win. It would be nice. It'd be nice if the Jets could stave off elimination at least for one other week. I don't know how well that'll work, but we'll be here after the game, so check us out. I'll be here for a post-game show sometime Sunday afternoon or evening. Talk to you then.